Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of How Does It Work? So, what I'm going to do today is mess about with some traps. Now, I've made a little alteration to the base, and I've been toying with these pusher traps. I made them identical, the pathway, the set, and everything on both sides. And the side on the right path worked perfectly, but the side on the left path never seemed to fire. So luckily I've got a little howler down there calling in reinforcements. Oh, okay, that one worked perfect. Fantastic. So that was when I made the change on. There's actually two. So if you go down here, you can see that there's two. And the second one, I didn't make the change on. I want to see whether or not... Did she just fall off the path? How is that even possible? Oh, it didn't trigger. Neither of them triggered. Right, there's a zombie there. Let's go and yet again test once more on this other side. There's this door, so that it's forced to go this side. Check. When he gets there, he's still pathing to where I was, not where I am. I'm going that way. And again, this one should be 100%. There's only one reason I like to think of as to why that may happen, that one side's more reliable than the other. And we'll cover that in a minute. It might not be the reason, but it's the only one I like to think of. Yeah, it just work every time on this side, but not on that side. And I've tried to say I've tried with different heights. This one's lower and higher. Everything on this side works perfect. Everything on this side, it works, but it's just not reliable. I'm just wondering whether or not there is a difference in the ray casting heights or something that are projected from this block forward. Now, what I mean by that is there's various ways in programming you can get something to see in front of it, especially in a 3D space where it's not just like the square in front. What you do is you basically shoot a beam called a ray for a certain distance from an object forward, and then anything that clips that ray object basically triggers the sight mechanism. It's like an invisible tripwire, I suppose you want to call it. It projects forward out of here, and if I clip it, it goes, oh, there's something in front of me. I can now do something. I'm just wondering whether or not the height or the length or wherever it is on both sides of an object or direction of facing in the game of an object, wherever it's going to be, are different. They're not quite equal or at the same height or what. I don't know why on one side it triggers, yeah, 100% of the time. It's completely reliable on the one side. That's exactly where it says on the tin. But then on the other side, it just doesn't. I don't know why that would be. But anyway, these are the pushers. I'll go through all of the traps right now. I think these, although they're a very new trap, I think they're a great addition. They can be very useful in your planning of a base. Not only do they do like a push damage to push somebody off the pathway. If they've got, if they're a tough monster, they can survive the damage. They just get pushed off and they have to run back around. Which I think is better than the trapdoor. We'll come into that in a moment. But also on top of that, they actually do quite a decent amount of damage. Okay, let's have a look at the various traps in this game and their uses. So, trap one, if you can call it a trap, is the spike. It's got an upgrade that doesn't require power, which is really good. What's useful about the spike? Well, it doesn't have charges. It's going to just keep on doing damage for as long as it's around. They're handy. They're useful for day one, day two sort of thing. They can be the difference between life and death. They are the only trap that actually triggers for like wolves. So if a wolf attacks your base and you've got all of the other traps, those traps only key and do stuff if they're zombies. They completely ignore wolves. However, these, if a wolf runs into them, will do damage. So they're handy, they're great. Negatives, they when a zombie takes damage from a trap, quite often that zombie might turn around and deal damage back to the source of the damage. Like, oh, you've hurt me, I'm gonna smack you one back. So they can take quite a few attacks, and that can be bad based on where you've placed them. So if you've placed them in proximity to your base, like where it is now, then not only are they attacking the spikes, but they're also attacking, the area around them. So even if they were like along the sides here to protect the side, if zombies bumped into them and started attacking them, the splash damage sometimes the zombies will cause can also then destroy your base. So you've got to be aware of the fact that if they get attacked, they potentially won't be doing damage back to the zombie anymore because the zombie will stay back at a range and just keep hitting it. So the zombie can just keep attacking it indefinitely without taking damage back, and not only destroy the spikes, but potentially destroy the surrounding area. The next bad thing about them is if you're not careful, they will block passage, block your pathing. And we've talked about, nodes and pathing on the previous episodes. So not only have you got quite an extensive node change here, so if I'm running towards it and I'm pathing, I'm gonna have to think about, I need to spend some of the nodes to go around it. If I'm a zombie trying to path, which they won't let us run into it. But if there was two of them here, and you literally blocked off pathway in some way, whether intentional or not, maybe you made it like so, thinking that they could pass through that gap, because that would probably then block the pathing completely. You've now just ruined the whole pathing mechanic of your zombies, and they'll just start attacking random stuff because you've placed one of these in such a way that you've stopped access to get to you. And you never want to stop access to getting you for zombies. Zombies should always be able to see you or a bait trap, one or the other. If they can't see either, there's no path to either, you can kiss goodbye to your base because they're just going to start attacking everything. Right, next trap. The spiked floor. Now, the spiked floor is actually a very handy trap. When they run over it, first of all, it shoots a bunch of spikes up that does damage to them. It takes 100 recharges per branch, so it's got a lot of usage. It's also one of the few traps that you can utilize with another trap, like a crusher, on top of it. And the pendulum can also go on top of it. So you can actually combine multiple traps in one space. So like the compressor, sorry, that can actually sit on top. I haven't got the resources right now to place one, but it can actually sit on top and it'll be happy. So they can both occupy the same space. Also, it quite often staggers the zombie quite well and stops them from running forward. Not always based on how agile the zombie is, but quite often when they hit it, it just gives them a moment of pause. And for something like a pendulum trap, that's perfect. Because the trouble with something like the pendulum trap is the arm swings quite slow, and by the time it's finished doing its job, the zombie could have left the area. And something like these underneath can just give you that moment pause for the pendulum then to come in and just smack them really hard. So downsides, they're slow. The first reaction will be boom, but then it takes a little while for it kind of like to reset itself before it fires again. So if you've got several zombies in a row coming through, it'll trigger and hit the first one, but then the second or third will probably just run straight past. It might not have time to reset itself. So they're great, but you can't rely on them to slow and kill a line of zombies. They don't do that much damage. But as I said, they're really handy. They don't interrupt pathing whatsoever. In fact, one of the things you can see on here really well, if you look closely, is the 10 by 10 nodes. They've actually got this split into the 10 by 10 node grid. You can actually see the grid. So when I was talking about, yeah, that 10 by 10 nodes that make up a block, you can see them on this item. They've actually literally drawn them for you. So you can see what I mean when I'm saying, like, you've got 500 nodes. It's 500 of these little boxes is how far a zombie will path on your base before the algorithm to try and find you decides that let's do something else because they can't get to you. Right, let's look at the next trap. The cutter, my favorite. I use the cutter all the time. It's kind of like my staple trap. There are some interesting things you can do with the cutter. We'll come to them in a moment. So first things first, it's got 100 charges. It spins blades around when zombies come in range, and it'll continue to spin and do damage no matter really how quickly the next zombie comes along. So there's a line of zombies, it'll just keep on spinning. So it's not as if it's got like a reset time. So it can do a lot of damage. Next really good thing about it is the range of the blades. The blades actually extend beyond its square. So they actually damage zombies in the next square. And what you can get with that is if you've got overlapping cutters, even if it's just in a straight line or it's in a box, wherever it is, if you've got overlapping cutters, not only am I going to start taking, say, 2 cutters in a row, I'll start taking damage here, I'm taking damage here, and then I'm taking double damage, here. I'm still going to be taking double damage here because the other cut is still going to be hitting me here, and then I go back to single damage, and I'm still taking damage here. So the amount of opportunity to get cut is very high. They're really useful in that respect. Another useful thing about them is they class as a floor. Now, what I mean by that is if you've actually got a situation whereby you can put down, just quickly make one for you. Bom, bom, bom. Let's just put down 2 walls. Try and give a good example. Okay, so when you've got, a support like that, you can place a floor object to act as a ceiling. If I can get the thing, come on. Right, okay, you can place a floor object to class as a ceiling. But what you can't do, so say you had like a pathway going over the top that the zombies are going to go along, you couldn't place a trap across this gap, across this hole, without placing a floor for most traps. Yeah, most traps require something, and something like the spikes from the floor you couldn't place anyway because it is a very deep trap and it wouldn't allow you. But a cutter, I think I've got enough resources to place another cutter. Yeah, a cutter actually acts as a floor tile. So you don't need to put in a floor tile and then the cutter. The cutter is a floor tile. So that can be very useful. Not only for saving resources, but just for keeping nice smooth pathing, height, etc. when you're doing something complex like that. Negatives of a cutter. The main negative of a cutter is the fact that the flame dogs, as we call them, the fire dogs, wherever, they will run underneath the cutter. They are low enough that the cutter blades won't hit them. There's ways you can get around that. The first is if the flame dog is taking damage, it'll rear up when it takes damage. So if you had like a flamethrower in this area, as the flame dogs come through and they were on fire, they would rear up, and then of course the cutter would also hit them. So you'd get the dual hit then. The other thing you can do is just sync the height of the cutters. And I don't necessarily mean in the pathway here, but what you can do is have cutters that are basically running alongside your path in some way, that reach across and hit this path. That can mean that they take damage as they go along the edge. So if you've got a pathway where the zombies are going to have to like turn a corner, they'll path and come in quite tight to the corner because they're going to turn the corner and they'll take the shortest route, and that means that a cutter in that area can actually hit them, or you can actually sink the pathway somewhat. Now you don't want to sink a pathway too much because you can break the pathing, but what you can do is you can sink the pathway a little bit, just enough to make sure that after you've placed a cutter on it, that the height of the path is something the zombie is still going to consider a viable path, like that, whereby that height's probably, maybe, that might be something that the zombies will navigate. You'll have to test. But the height of the cutter when the flame dog approaches is going to be as such that it's going to take damage until it's fully on the square. But as it comes in, it'll take damage. But yeah, that's the downside of a cutter, is they're not going to be able to damage your flame dogs, and you're going to have to think of something else to deal with the flame dog, really. Right, on to the next one. The Guillotine. Oh, we've actually got a zombie coming down the pathway towards us on this one. In the past, these would have been my main damage dealing traps. These would have been the ones I would have gone to if I wanted to kill flame dogs, and anything really that got past a certain point in my base, and I just wanted to say, right, you've got to a certain point, time to die. The Guillotine would have been my trap of choice, and there's a reason why not now, but I'll come to that in a minute. So what does it do? It deals a massive amount of damage. I mean, it really does. What are the benefits of the Guillotine? Well, you can stack 10 of them to one block. Because their feet are only one node in size, I actually don't have enough resources to place another one, but I can show you. You can place them next to each other. You can literally stack 10 all along here. And have 10 guillotines in one block. The amount of damage that would cause would basically kill anything. It's just insane. What I would do is, if I'd got like a series whereby I got a load of traps that would have cleared out all of the trash mobs and things, the cutters and some floor spikes and bits and pieces, I can then sort of like start introducing next to a crusher or a floor spike or something like that, just in the gap between two traps. So if this was a floor spike here, and maybe and a crusher, I could put one of these. Literally, it'll join between the trap on that square and the trap on that square. It would allow you to stick one between. It doesn't allow you to stick one next to the cutter because of the overreaching blade. But most traps, you can stick one between. So they're great that way. Downsides. Now, the first downside is they've only got 10 uses before you have to recharge them. That's why I wouldn't put them at the front of your base. They shouldn't be the first trap that zombies encounter, even though they're going to just kill the zombie. 10 uses. You're potentially killing trash zombies, basic, ordinary, normal zombies, with a trap that's capable of killing, your butchers and your flame dogs and your stuff like that. So you really shouldn't be putting this at the front. It just hasn't got the charges. So put a load of other traps first, your 100 use charges like your cutters and your spikes, etc., to thin out all of the normal zombies and to weaken some of the more tougher zombies. And then, only after they've passed maybe like 6 traps or something, you then want to start putting these guys in, just to finish off anything that's got any further, and just go, boof, right, that's it, you're not going any further. Now to the real big negative. And it's one of the current issues I have with the game as it stands right now. And it's a big issue. And that is with the introduction of giant zombies. Now, with the introduction of giant zombies, any trap that's got a height, it's got a bar, it's got a pole, it blocks their pathing. They won't come walking down this path to come and get me because I've got a trap that's got a height on it. And it's as simple as that. Which means, to be honest, this, along with several others I'm going to show you now, become completely obsolete. don't even include them in your base. There's no point. Because the moment the big guy turns up, well, he can't path to you anymore. So he just starts destroying your base. It's just, why introduce a zombie into the game that can path with the existing trap sets you've got? People have literally got to go around and destroy some really useful and interesting, when it comes to like the pendulum, interesting traps. They can't be used anymore because of the introduction of just one zombie. They personally, I would lower the height of the big zombie. I know it looks impressive as this big giant zombie, but other than being impressive to look at from a functional point of view, it ruins your content. It makes your content obsolete, and it makes hiding inside points of interest, buildings, things, um, more of a thing that's encouraged because the zombie can't get through the door. Why introduce a zombie that encourages gameplay that isn't creative and nullifies some of your traps to the point whereby the sheer act of using them destroys the pathing of the game. But anyway, I mean, this is the guillotine. It was a great trap. Now, though, I wouldn't use it. Next one. The Shredder! So, first things is, why have I put the Shredder on the side like that? The answer to that is, you can actually put two Shredders on an area and have enough of a gap between that the zombies will path down the middle. Careful. You get it wrong, you'll block your pathing. But you can actually place two Shredders so that the zombies will path down the middle, allowing you to hit, two lots of shredding at once. And some people actually make nice little zigzags of pathways whereby they force the zombies to, kind of go up this row and then like down the other side and then up the other side and make like a little maze of shredders, which is great. I mean, they do a great job of absolutely shredding zombies. They really do. So they've got 100 charges, so they'll last quite a long time. They do good damage, so I do like a shredder. Negatives, well, they take two squares. They're quite a large object. I mean, that could be a positive, as I said, for you to create like little mazes or for you to fill up some of your space on your pathway. A shredder's good because it does not only take up two squares to fill up some space, but it does damage across the whole of those two squares. It's not just like it's a big blob. We'll come to the pendulum in a minute, but it actually does, damage across the whole thing. So, I mean, negatives, you can quite easily block your pathing with this and cause pathing issues. Whenever you place down shredders, I would just make sure you've got a daytime spawn or two to deal with first so that you can check the pathing before the actual wave arrives. You don't want the wave to turn up and then you find out your shredder you've placed has messed up the pathing. And the reason why I say the shredder can mess up the pathing is because if you placed it centrally, like, you kind of seems to be the most logical thing, and I'll redo that now. I'll put it centrally. A simple way that sometimes people mess up pathing is they'll place this centrally, boom, but then right in front of it or behind it, you'll have something like one of these, and what you'll get straight away, the options for the zombies to go around the edges here, because they can't go through the center, and they're going to potentially be blocked by the column of a trap in front. And it is actually quite possible, especially if you're doing it on, there's a corner coming up or something like that, and you've got like, a crusher here and a crusher there, whatever. You can actually make it so the zombie can't get past. You get stuck, or won't path. So just be a little bit careful about making sure your path is good after a shredder. The next thing about a shredder that is not the best. Yet again, is when it comes to fighting the giant zombies. Um, Depending on what else is going on with the giant zombie, sometimes the giant zombie can end up just the range of those spikes is not very far, and they can just kind of walk past very easily. Lesser zombies can as well, but lesser zombies tend to try and like cut the angles tighter, as with those big giant ones. They don't. They don't tend to sometimes cut quite as tight, and they can end up just walking past a little bit easier than I would like. I'd rather use something like a cutter versus than where I'd guaranteed like that hit. So they're great. But the range of those spikes sometimes is a little bit. Ooh, if they were just a bit longer, a bit bigger, they would be perfect versus everything, including the big giant guys. And I'm not saying they're not good versus the giant guys. They are good versus the giant guys. It's just sometimes it's annoying when you can see them just walk just past and you're thinking, oh, if only those spikes were just a little bit longer. But yeah, Shredder is a good mainstay trap of the game. I would definitely encourage you putting shredders in your base. They are brilliant. Oh, they can also hit the fire dogs. Their height is such that the fire dogs, if they come in close, will also get hit, which is a good bonus. Next trap. The Compressor. Yet again, another one of those traps that used to be a mainstay of all of my bases. They're the perfect corner base. So if you've got like a turning in your pathway, they were perfect to go on the corner. Some traps aren't so great on the corners because the zombie will literally just cut the edge. They will run up. Yeah, again, let's put a block down. Just kind of give an example. I'll put a block down here just in case some zombies actually start spawning now. That time of day. So if this is the direction that the path is going, a zombie can sometimes just take that edge. They'll just come in and just go like that. Which means traps that are here, especially like the floor traps, the spikes, may not even trigger. Or if they do, because the zombie has gone through that so fast, the trigger doesn't hit them. But with one of these on the corner itself, if you actually want it to be on this square, go on, I'll do it. I mean, I'm here giving examples. So let's do it properly. Let's make it a corner. Okay, so this is a corner. Now, because it's on the actual turn of the corner, when the zombie comes in, they can't take that angle, especially if there's a wall here. There's no pathway. So they have to come in and path into this square proper to path around. And that is more than enough time if you put down the floor spikes into this section as well. The floor spikes are going to trigger, hit the zombie, the crusher's going to come down and crush them. And then, as I said, you can put a guillotine along the back edge as well. And then after taking those, they can come to here and just get smashed by a guillotine. So crushers used to be the mainstay of my bases on corners. They were really, really useful. Downsides, well, first of all, they only got 25 charges. So you don't necessarily want them yet again right at the front of your base. Not the first thing a zombie's going to hit. 25 charges is going to go down too fast. I do have it actually. I do have a couple of them literally at the front of my sausage factory. Only just because, it's fun. It's fun to see the zombies go splat as they get crushed. The negative, though, the big negative, yet again, it's got a height. I mean, before it used to be a positive, you could walk across the top. You could like make a bridge way to the top of this trap and use the top of this trap as a pathway. You could walk along, which means that you could replenish it from above. You could stand on top of it to reload it, which was great. But now with the giant zombies, yet again, if you have one of these on your path somewhere, the giant zombie can no longer path to you because this will block this pathing. And it'll say, oh, I can't get you. I'm just going to destroy everything else. So, well done. This is now a complete waste of time. Lovely trap. Pointless. Next. The fan favorite. The Pendulum. Oh, this is such a good laugh. So positives. It's more of like a fun trap. It's difficult to come up with positives and negatives in this. Well, negatives, yes, but positives. Okay. It takes up 3 squares. I'm not quite sure if that's a positive or not. But it can fill out your base pathway if you haven't got many traps to use. It's something you can use. The roof is a pathway. You can walk along the top. If you can make nice pathways across the top of your traps and replenish them from above. And of course, then you can stand on top of your pendulum and replenish it. Awesome. Brilliant. You know where I'm going with that. But that was great. The other big positive is, well, when that arm, you can see there, that big spiked mace thing, when it swings and it hits a zombie, it does a lot of damage. And should they survive the damage, they're going to be knocked into the direction of the swing. Not flying, but they'll get knocked a bit. So if I actually had this facing the other direction, which would be more sensible, when the arm would swing down here, they would knock the zombie, if it hit them here, back into this square. Which means as they're coming down here, they're just getting delayed. They're not going to get hit, you know, probably. They can actually, as they move forward again, on the back swing of the mace, get hit a second time. But then if that happens, they're actually getting knocked forward. So it kind of defeats the whole knock back, knock forward thing. But they can get hit twice on the front swing and then on the back swing. Another interesting fact about these is they don't need to be connected to the middle slot. And what that means is something I'd have to kind of set up a bit more here, but it's a quick example. Let's just put down 2 of these. Bum, bum, bum. Right, so it's got the height. And then we get rid of that one. And then we can replace this one. Now what they can have is they don't need to have a solid floor the whole way. They can get their height a bit. You can have them with a gap in between. Now, of what use that is, I'm not entirely sure, because that's the middle bit is really the point where the pendulum does its damage. So it's too high to hit anybody here, and it's too high to hit anybody at the other end. So doing this, I mean, there might be some clever technical usage of doing this that I'm not really thinking of. I might be able to come up with a cunning plan where this is a really good idea. At the top of my head right now, I'm not sure what that cunning plan is. But I mean, if I was challenged to make something useful of this kind of setup, I think I could probably come up with something. However, the downside, well, first of all, it's only got 30 charges, which is not great. Doesn't last that long. So yet again, not another, frontline trap, really. It's using up 3 spaces. It's gone in 30 blows. Yeah, okay, it'll do some big damage. But that big damage is best used against the tougher zombies. They're like your butchers and stuff. You don't want to be using that kind of damage versus ordinary run-of-the-mill zombies. So it needs to be back a bit in your line. But the worst of all, as we've already said, it's got a roof. Means the giant zombies won't path. Which means, sadly, Pendulum, you've now been relegated to a complete waste of time. And that's a pity, because it's just a fun trap. It's just a weird, fun, ingenious trap. All right, next. The meat mallet. I've tried this out. It's a new trap. I have tried it out. I'm not impressed. I mean, it looks fun. It looks cool. I think if it hits its target, it probably does a reasonable amount of damage. It's just the chances of it actually hitting the target you want it to hit, it's not great. I mean, it's at the height whereby it could hit a flame dog, so that's nice. But, I mean, chances are the zombie's going to pass through here. By the time that thing swung around, he's gone. Yeah, it's not like a cutaway, but there's 3 blades. So as he goes past, he's going to get hit. I mean, okay, on peaceful mode, these zombies are going so slow. They're probably going to get hit by this. And we'll see now with this guy. But when you start going up the difficulty level, especially something crazy like Legend, where the speed of the zombies are moving so fast, there's no chance that thing's going to hit them. Even then, even on peaceful mode, it went so slow that that zombie just walked past. I mean, seriously? So, although it looks funny, unique, unless they increase its speed to twice the speed that it currently spins at, there's no point. I mean, maybe on the upgraded version of it, I don't know. Maybe if you upgrade it to the electrical version of it, it spins really fast and it becomes a very useful toy. We'll check that later on when I get to the point whereby I can upgrade all these traps, and we'll check them out again as the upgraded version. Maybe I'll change my mind and say, "Ooh, this is great." But as the base version, don't waste your time using it on this. There's far, every other trap really is of more use than this. It's just too slow. Right, next. Okay, next is the pusher. You've already seen these in action already in this video. I'm standing on top of one. So first of all, I can walk on top of them, which is cool. I can replenish them from above. The damage was fine. So here we are. We have the pushers. They're very handy when they work, and you can get them to work successfully on your pathway. Get your pathway working correctly. They can push them off the path, which is brilliant because it means that the zombie then is going to run all the way back around the start again. And they do a lot of damage. They can be placed on blocks. They can even be placed on the floor. They're just all around, I think, a really nice introduction to what blocks we have. If you've used them like I have here, where you've got some kind of flooring and above. And the reason I've got this set up like I have is that if a zombie falls in here with this kind of flooring, they can still path out. That's the reason why the floors like this is so that the zombies can find their way out should they fall in. Negatives. Okay, they've only got 30 uses, as you can see. And they also are pretty slow. So once they've fired, it takes a little while for them to reset themselves before they will fire again. So if you've got quite a few zombies coming in a path, one pusher thing is not going to be enough. You're going to want to have a lot of them so that you can, pick up all of the zombies coming along. I want to try at one point as a test here is maybe to put something like, 8 pushers in a row and see just how well they handle, the big heavier spawns later on in the game. Are they going to be able to keep up? Is 8 enough to keep smashing things off the path? I mean, that could be a very useful thing. And then, of course, you're going to want to keep replenishing them a lot if they're going to be, handling a whole spawn like that. So in which case, yeah, you're going to want to put some kind of pathway with some kind of barricade so the zombies can spit at you, leap at you, pull you, or whatever it's going to be. Some walls so that you can run along safely and replenish from above. Just be aware if you're going to do that, that unless you've got a bait trap at the end that the zombies are aiming for, they're still trying to path to you. So you need to make sure that you have an open door and that the overall length here is going to be within the 50. Although I know I've got like a 25 block pathway down there, then I know I can have a 25 block, roof, and they'll still path to me. Just need to make sure they don't actually, get past all of your traps and into the base and come after you, because then you've kind of given yourself no way out, and you're gonna. This is full of walls. I'm stuck in my own little coffin, which would not be good. Anyway, I'm digressing. That's the Crusher. I do like the Crusher. Um, when the giant zombies encounter crushers, when they're on the floor, they can sometimes end up walking on top of them, so you can't make it so that their pathway is blocked really with the crushers because they'll just walk across the top of them. You want to encourage the big giant zombies to walk in front of them. But other than that, I don't really see many negatives with the crusher other than the fact that their ability to target and trigger on the square in front of them, as we've seen earlier, can be a little bit suspect. Uh, but on with the next trap. The grinder. Now, I actually do like the grinder. It's a new trap, and it looks like it's just going to be, well, surely it's another cutter. And the answer to that is, well, yeah, in some ways, I mean, it's got an overlapping blade on this side. You know, when that spins around, you could say that the blade would clip somebody at the edge of here if you're lucky. But because they've got like they go back and forth in whichever direction you want to go back and forth in, um, unlike the cutter, you couldn't guarantee that the extended blade is going to be doing anything. So you're thinking, well, why would I use the was it the grinder? Yeah, the grinder over the cutter. Well, the interesting thing with the grinder is, well, it's twice as many chances of cutting. You've got two blades. You've literally got two traps swinging their arms. And sometimes with this, when the zombies start dodging, when you're getting up in more difficulty, they can run through here with a greater chance of just not getting hit because their dodge skill just allows them to dodge the attack. But with this one, there's twice as many traps. Like it's like, oh dodge, oh dodge. Also, the pathway for the zombie is changing. I mean, it's different if it's this way. The pathway for the zombie is not changing because it's just going to head into the middle. If you've got going across, that forces the zombie to have to kind of like renegotiate its pathing because it could just run bunk into this and then it'll move the way and then it'll carry on. But that means the chances of it getting cut increase because it's oh bunk and cut. It doesn't do that much damage, I would say. I don't think these blades, because you know the size of them is small compared to this. The damage output is not great, but the amount of chances it's got to do damage is good. So I would say for the ordinary little trash zombies, you know, the little starter zombies, the normal ones, a grinder is a really good way to just start getting rid of the normal zombies. These have got 100 charges, just like a cutter, so they last a long time before they need to be refilled. So to get rid of those early normal zombies, I think a grinder is a very good choice. It does the job of trash zombie killing very well, I think. I don't know what the upgraded version is like, but the base version, yeah, it's a new introduction. I think it's definitely got its place on your base layout. Negatives. Well, negatives, it's no good versus the giant zombies. The giant zombies, because you've got basically two poles in such close proximity, the giant zombies actually end up standing on top of it. They don't path, like they don't put their leg in here. They just put their leg on top, which not only nullifies their use versus the giant zombies, but now that the giant is now at a higher level, it's an opportunity to step onto other things and walk on top of other traps maybe becomes even more increased. So you could end up having the giant zombie pathing somewhere whereby you didn't think it was going to path to, because it's actually used this as almost like a little stairs. It stood on this by accident. It's not probably pathing that way, but it's going this direction. It stood on this, and then it's been, you know, it's moved intentionally or accidentally onto something else that's a bit higher, and there you've got a giant zombie where you didn't want one. So there's a little bit of care that needs to be taken with that. But to be honest, I think that's quite minor and not a major concern. And overall, I would definitely be using these as trash killers. Right, next. The Trapdoor. Now, what I have above me is a trapdoor. Trap. So in this example here, what you'd have is some kind of path for the zombie. Let me just try and give a bit of an example. So, not all gonna be at the right height here, but I'll just it's not gonna connect. Okay, so say we've got a path coming down here, then the zombies come up here, and then they hit the trapdoor, and then they're gonna carry on pathing towards you. The trapdoor is really cool. It'll open and drop the zombie down below. Now, this pathway, as you can imagine, could be as high in the world as you want it to be, within reason. Once you can't get the zombies to path up there. You could just drop the zombie out so that he ends up on the ground. And then, just like with the pushers, he's got to then go back to the beginning of the thing and start all over again. So, if you had it like the last trap in your base, the zombie's gone through all 40 odd squares of your base of traps, and it somehow survived because all the traps have run out of charges or whatever, and it's got to the end and it hits this and it drops out and it has to go all the way back to square one. So they can be really useful like that. However, let's go over the negatives because there are a couple. One can be avoided, the other one not so much. So the first negative that it's not so much as the fact it's only got 10 charges, okay? So it's got 10 uses and then it's of no use. Now, this brings us on to the second negative, and you need to be aware of it when you're making trapdoors on your base. Not only when it completely runs out of charges does it remain in the open status. I can't change the status view now, but it basically opens up so the zombies can drop down, and when it's run out of charges, it remains open. So when it remains open, well, there's no pathway here anymore, yeah? There's just a space. So a zombie's not going to path this way anymore because the trapdoor is now remaining open. Secondly, during its actual usage, so when it actually drops a zombie, at the moment of dropping that zombie, it breaks the path. Any zombie on your base at that point, just checking its pathway at the moment that this opens and drops a zombie, will start attacking your base. And will stay attacking your base for quite a period of time before it decides to check pathing again. So, high risk. To get around that, as I say, it can be avoided. All you do is you just create another path around it. So, I wouldn't have the stairs going directly to the trapdoor. I'd have the stairs come into like a square before the trapdoor. And then, trying to give an example here. So, say this stone here was the trapdoor. What you could just do is just put a block here, here, and here. Now, the zombie will not go onto the blocks at the side. I'll try and just physically show, I think, is always the best. So, put an extra couple of blocks. Now, the zombie will take the shortest path. Now, it won't go around that way. It'll go through the middle, hit the trapdoor. But when the trapdoor is open, any zombie looking to repath will see that, oh, yeah, there's a path here. And when the trapdoor is completely used up, there's still a path here. And if you want, you could put cutters and things on these so that you're still, killing the zombies that are coming this way if that's what you want to do. But it just means that if you want to use a trapdoor, you have to give an alternate route for the zombie for when that trapdoor is open. Otherwise, they can't path. And we know what happens then. All right, next. Okay, these are the last of the traps I'll cover on this series. The ranged traps, etc. I will cover on well, it's not on this series, but on this episode. On a different episode, I'll show the ranged traps. But there's two more kind of like traps that are left without it going into powered devices. So the first trap is that one. It's really a PvP trap. Yeah? It's a trap that is there to... It'll hit a player. So if you're doing PvP, this little leg trap thing here actually hits players. Is where I'm still crippled now. Crippled, crippled, crippled. These will not. As you can see, it gives a crippled effect on me. So in a PvP environment, one of these traps can be really useful. It can really cripple the other player and be very, very handy. And the other one is the landmine. The landmine is equally of use, and is really useful for killing players. They're both PvP traps, with clearly the landmine taking the the biggest amount of reward here for doing damage. It does set fire to anything that's flammable around it. As you can see, that there's burning in the background. I mean, if I click revive now, I mean, I think my bed is nearby, and we can go and look at the burning mess. Just put it around here. Boom, boom, boom. So in the event you don't have stone flooring set up everywhere yet, yeah, it's going to start burning everything. Let's just try and repair this and put it out. Oh, I've got no branches on me because they're all in that chest. I can't get to it because I'm on fire. There you go. So that's all the traps. I hope you enjoyed them. Next episode, I'll show the various range traps and what they can do. Sadly, a lot of those are probably going to need now power. So the next episode of showing the traps is probably not going to be until after I've done an episode showing how power works, how creating electricity works. And to do that, I'm going to have to let this world go through quite a few more days and waves and chance me to go out in the world to scavenge stuff so that I can unlock in the research tree the things I need to get electricity going. I'm on my way, but I need books, which I need to go to various research facilities and get. Oh, one last thing before we go. I've actually started a Patreon channel for support of the channel. It's not something that you need to join. It's purely there because people are donating to my channel to help support the channel, and I want to find some way to give something back. It's a reward. So I've created a Patreon channel, which will be in the link. And it's purely there as a reward. You're not missing any content as such if you don't sign up to the Patreon. However, for those people that do, there is a massive videos in there already, and there'll be more that are a thank you. They're a reward. They're just extra stuff. It's not necessarily of Night of the Dead. It could be any game. It could just be vlogs of me talking about various topics or doing other things. It can be outtakes, so where I've edited a video to, match with really cool music and stuff that we're doing. Sometimes I've got to cut out some great fight sequences or interesting things like, some of the build design I was doing or some of the damage that my base had taken, etc. Well, all those things that would normally end up on the cutting room floor, and I would just get rid of them. The good stuff out of that, I can put into the Patreon area. So it's not stuff that you're missing out on if you don't sign up to the Patreon. However, for those that do, there's lots of extra goodies. There's only 2 levels of Patreon. There's a base level of Patreon that is £3 I'm not quite sure what that equates to in your country, your currency. But it's basically as cheap as I could have put it, that after taxes and stuff, that there's anything there to support the channel with. And there is a higher, more expensive one for those who feel like that they want to support the channel in a way that's more than just that base. And for those people, I mean, they get a free t-shirt and all other kinds of goodies. But yeah, again, they're not going to get anything that you're going to miss out on if you're just watching the YouTube channel and you're enjoying just watching the YouTube content. It's purely a thank you gifts in the Patreon channel for those that want to support. There's just a load of goodies in there for me to basically say, look, thank you very much. Here's a load of entertainment, extra hours of entertainment potentially every month, wherever it's going to be for you to enjoy as a reward and, you know, for saying thanks. So anyway, that's my Patreon channel. If you're interested, there's a link in the description. And thank you very much again, and see you all next time. Bye.